back to the Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. In February, 2 young children experiencing homelessness froze to death while sleeping in their mother's van parked inside a Detroit casino garage. That news saddened and angered many in Detroit, and as a result, the city doubled funding for homeless shelters and increased outreach to people on the street who are experiencing homelessness. But according to Detroit housing analyst Alex Alsop, that report doesn't get to the root of the homelessness problem.
Instead, he suggests the city should lobby state lawmakers to continue the pay-as-you-stay law, which will be phased out in July. That program, in addition to the homeowners property tax exemption and the Detroit Tax Relief Fund, have prevented thousands of potential foreclosures and many possible cases of homelessness over the past decade. Producer Sam Corey sat down with Alex to discuss his recent analysis that he explored in his Substack, The Chargeback, and why he believes these laws are preventing homelessness and need to be kept around.
You note that the city is overlooking the problem of tax foreclosures when it comes to housing insecurity. But foreclosures have been down drastically in the past few years. Why should Detroit focus on that as an issue when it comes to homelessness?
Yeah, great question. So, I think homelessness is downstream oftentimes of policy issues. And, during the 2010s, one of the major avenues to homelessness in Detroit was tax foreclosure. There's been incredible progress over the last few years in shutting down tax foreclosure as a avenue to the loss of homes for owner-occupants, for tenants as well. But a lot of that is because there are systems and programs that were put in place to address the route to homelessness caused by tax foreclosure. And chief amongst those is the pay-as-you-stay legislation that was passed in 2020, which allows for the retroactive reduction of property tax debt owed by homeowners in poverty who get the city of Detroit's property tax exemption known as HOPE. And so that hard-won progress to eliminating tax foreclosure as a route to homelessness, didn't just happen on its own. There was a lot of work done to create programs to make that the case. And if we lose some of those programs, we are certainly at risk of backsliding.
You note that between 2020 and 2024, 750 Detroiters lost their homes compared with over 6,000 in 2015 alone. So that's just showing the effectiveness of the pay-as-you-stay program, making sure that people have their property taxes covered and should have been covered originally, as you noted, because they were in poverty.
That's right. Yes. There's been incredible success driving down owner-occupied tax foreclosures over the last few years. That avenue has really been shut off effectively as a route to losing one's home. But again, it takes constant vigilance and maintenance and the existence of these programs for that to be the case. If those things start to go away, this progress won't remain on its own.
Yeah. I want to go to the city's plan for a second because they released a 7-point plan recently to improve services for people who are unsheltered and homeless. In that plan, the city doubled funding for homelessness from $6 to $12 million, increased shelter beds, and extended the work of outreach teams helping homeless individuals to 24/7. You say that this doesn't really get to the root of the homeless problem in Detroit. I do want to know what you make of these plans that the city released.
I'm sure that those are all beneficial steps to take. My point is simply that homelessness is, what I refer to as an iceberg problem, right? It's the visible outcome of a lot of buried policy failures or policies that don't exist that are buried beneath the surface that you can't see.
You're listening to the Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm producer Sam Corey speaking with Alex Alsop about his most recent Substack, on getting to the roots of homelessness in Detroit. Alex, I want to go back in time a little bit. You were talking about people losing their homes because their property taxes should have been exempted because they were in poverty, but they weren't. What happened there? Why weren't they exempted? What was the problem that Wayne County ran into?
So the property tax exemption is administered at the city level. It's not a county program. It's a city program. And state law says that every city in Michigan needs to offer some kind of property tax reduction to homeowners in poverty. Back 10 years ago or so, Detroit offered and still does offer a 100% exemption from your current year's property taxes if you are a homeowner in poverty. The issue was that up until around 2015, 16, maybe it was even 2017 when the HOPE exemption application changed, just to get the HOPE application from the city of Detroit, you had to physically go to City Hall and fill out an application for the HOPE application to then be mailed to you. So it was so fundamentally inaccessible as a program that basically nobody applied for it or was granted it.
Why? Why was it so inaccessible? Do you know?
I think that the reason was that there was a misguided desire to protect property tax revenue, an idea that if people were getting this exemption, you would not be getting tax revenue from them. But of course, the city didn't get property tax revenue from them anyway, because they didn't have the money to pay their property taxes. And so, there were studies from University of Michigan back around that time that estimated something around 35,000 Detroit homeowners who would qualify for that 100% property tax exemption each year. But from around 2012 to 2015, 2016, there were only about 3,500 homeowners who were actually getting the exemption. Since then, the city has done a lot of work to make the exemption more accessible, to make it easier to apply for. And that's been fantastic because now it's much more like 20,000 homeowners who are applying and getting the HOPE exemption every year. And that is the entry point that automatically triggers pay as you stay to reduce tax debt if a homeowner has tax debt and gets the HOPE exemption. But that was fundamentally the issue, 10 years ago. And a big part of what informed homeowner tax foreclosures at the time was just that people were, qualified for this exemption, but didn't fundamentally have a way to get at it, to apply for it.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about HOPE. I do want to broaden this and just note that there are 3 programs that you're focused on that you say keep people in their homes and keeps people essentially afloat and stable. We've talked about the pay-as-you-stay program. You mentioned HOPE, which is homeowners property tax exemption. And then there's the Detroit Tax Relief Fund, which pays off the remaining property tax debt for homeowners that have partaken in the pay-as-you-stay law. So I guess can you talk about, just real briefly, how these 3 programs interact with each other?
Sure. What's really nice about the connection between HOPE, pay-as-you-stay, and the Detroit Tax Relief Fund is that even though they are 3 distinct things, the experience for a homeowner is just the HOPE application. So if you are a homeowner who is, in poverty and believes they are eligible for a HOPE exemption, you apply for the HOPE exemption. If you are granted the HOPE exemption, it automatically triggers pay as you stay, which is administered at the county level through the county treasurer's office, which reduces the back taxes owed on your home by about 50 to 70%. And the activation of pay as you stay then automatically triggers the Detroit Tax Relief Fund, which is, again, a philanthropic fund from the Gilbert Family Foundation, which pays off the property tax debt that is remaining. And that's administered by Wayne Metro. And so as a homeowner, you only need to apply for one thing, which is HOPE. And then that automatically triggers these 2 other programs to effectively create a fully retroactive property tax exemption that can eliminate your current year's property tax obligation as a homeowner in poverty and eliminate your risk of foreclosure through the elimination of property tax debt.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All these programs are essentially relieving people of the tax property burden that they shouldn't have in the first place. There are some problems with these programs, though. One of the things that you mentioned is that the pay-as-you-stay law is expiring in July. Is there anything that city officials can do to keep that program other than essentially bother legislators to renew it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is what needs to happen. It was passed initially in 2020 with the support of the city of Detroit, and without the city of Detroit's support, it will expire in July of this year. So I think that the city, I think the mayor and other officials, should be pushing for a renewal and extension of the pay-as-you-stay law, because, again, without that, if that pay-as-you-stay law expires in July of this year, we will lose that critical component that actually is responsible for retroactively reducing the property tax debt of homeowners in poverty who get the HOPE exemption.
Yeah, you're saying city officials need to go to Lansing and make this happen. I want to end by discussing some big picture sort of options or maybe possibilities for getting to the root causes of homelessness. As of 2023, there were hundreds of vacant units that the Detroit Housing Commission was just sitting on. Should the city be considering investing a lot more in its housing commission and just making sure that there are no empty apartment units, that if somebody needs one, they are in one?
So, there's lots of things that we can do to improve the options for housing availability. I think, what we've been talking about is primarily on the homeowner side, right? People who already have a house, and we're just trying to make sure that they can stay in it and that they don't fall into the most likely way for a homeowner to lose their home in the city of Detroit, which has over the last 15 years or so been tax foreclosure. I think when you're looking on the tenant side, there's a different equation. Part of the issue is who owns rental housing stock in the city. We have a lot of absentee landlords. We've seen interesting stories recently about fractional crypto-based ownership of rental housing and vacant houses sitting vacant on the east side, owned by unconventional structures like that, speculators sitting on vacant housing. And so, I think that one of the steps that the city started to take, a year or two ago, which I remain very supportive of, is a move towards something more like a land value tax system that does not incentivize as greatly speculating and sitting on vacant land, vacant property, and can do more to stimulate the productive use of vacant houses and of vacant land.
Like the issue of the land value tax and like some of the programs we've been talking here, you need Lansing. Like you need the state legislators to show up and to support these programs and to renew them.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, we do.
There's a lot of housing stock in Detroit, but a significant portion of it is in disrepair, and so much so that people should not be living in those units, although some people still are because, they don't have the money. I know this is expensive, but should the city and state be investing a lot more in creating small, sturdy homes or more apartments throughout Detroit, or pouring that into home repairs to ensure that people can have safe units to live in?
Yeah, part of the issue that we see with rental housing, especially in the single-family home market in Detroit, again, is sort of coming back to this question of, well, who owns it? You have people living in substandard housing. Oftentimes what you see in the rental market is it's not being invested in. The tenant's not going to do it because they don't own it. And you may have an absentee landlord who, lives far away from the city. We've seen a lot of acquisitions on the east side over the last couple of years from real estate firms based in South Florida, for instance. They're not investing in the housing. What I would like to see more aggressively considered is how do you get some of those owners out of the picture and make it so that there is an ownership structure that allows for the investment in the repair of those homes. We've seen the hugely beneficial effects of programs like Make It Home for tenants who are in homes that are facing tax foreclosure, where Make It Home actually makes it possible for the tenant to become the homeowner and get the absentee landlord out of the picture. And then there are repair programs on the other side of the Make It Home process that allow for the repair and improvement of the home for that new homeowner. And so, again, I think that a lot of this issue comes down to, who owns these homes, and is there a way to bring more, local control over the city's housing stock into the city?
That was producer Sam Corey speaking with Alex Alsop, author of the Substack, The Chargeback. Alex wants state lawmakers to keep the pay-as-you-stay law, which will be phased out in July unless state lawmakers decide to renew it.
Up next, we'll flip through the pages of a new memoir about Black women living and dying in America and the joy, love, and loss that punctuate those moments. Stay with us. This is The Metro.